Welcome to another edition of Ian Cameron's Football Frenzy. It is the NFL Divisional Playoff Weekend edition of the show. Ian Cameron, Philip Nelson back with me, ready to break down the divisional playoff games, 4 of them this weekend. You know, you can make a good case for this being the best weekend of the NFL season, divisional weekend, because it's the last weekend where you've got, games on 2 different days. You got 2 Saturday games, 2 Sunday games. Now you have every team left standing, including the 2 teams that got a bye week. The number 1 seeds enter the playoff fray this weekend, Seattle and Denver in action. So this is one of the best weekends of the NFL season, divisional playoff weekend, and definitely looking forward to talking about these games. But before we do that, we do want to have a brief recap of what happened in Wild Card Weekend. I mean, I already did a show yesterday, and you can find it on the channel with Rob Vino, who's been on the Football Frenzy with us a bunch of times this season. And I gave a lot of thoughts on the games, so I'll just be brief and let Phil have the stage. But when it comes to Rams-Panthers, it was just Matthew Stafford finding a way in the clutch. And what's impressive about that is, he banged his finger and his throwing hand on the helmet of a player in that game. And from that point on, we saw him kind of struggle to complete passes. And he went, I think, 2 for 10 right after that. And yet with the game on the line, Matt Stafford right down the field against Carolina's defense and found a way. And what a perfect ball placement throw to Colby Parkinson to lead the Rams to that big touchdown they needed at the end to come back and beat Carolina. Hell of an effort from Carolina. Bryce Young outstanding in a losing effort, really, for the most part in that game. I think you can take a lot of positives from that if you're Carolina, and about the development of your young quarterback, who I think really took a few steps as far as growth and improvement and development, even in a losing cause. And certainly the playoff experience can't hurt Bryce Young moving forward. Of course, I'm sure Philip has some things to say about his beloved Green Bay Packers. What a horrific loss, epic collapse against the Chicago Bears, or you could call it an epic comeback if you prefer to look at this through the Chicago Bears lens. But definitely it was an unbelievable game, incredible comeback by Chicago. Again, for the second time this season at Soldier Field in the same venue, they come back to beat the Green Bay Packers. Outstanding game. Lots of fault to go around with Green Bay. Bad play calling, too conservative. What happened to the defense? Basically, the coaching staff got the better of Matt LaFleur's staff. Ben Johnson's staff did at halftime. The offense made their adjustments, and they shredded the Green Bay defense. The defense made their adjustments, and Green Bay's offense stopped moving the football. Special teams issues. It wouldn't be a Green Bay Packer heartbreak without special teams fucking them over. And Brandon McManus, of course, misses a key field goal down the stretch as well. So everything, it was a multitude of factors, but a brutal loss for Green Bay there. You flip it to Sunday, Josh Allen puts the cape on. They beat Jacksonville. That was just like the LA game where he hits his hand on the helmet of a player. And after that, his throwing was a bit up and down and erratic. But with the game on the line, he put the injuries, and he got banged around in that game. My goodness, his knee got hurt in that game, on a tackle that he took. But Josh Allen puts it all aside. When the team, with their season on the line, needs a touchdown to win the game, he delivers. And Josh Allen leads the Bills in a really entertaining game against Jacksonville to victory there. I was shocked about how bad the LA Chargers were and Justin Herbert and that offense against New England. And look, it's not all the O-line, in my opinion. There were opportunities for Herbert. There were times he had a clean pocket, and he was missing throws. He was hanging onto the ball too long. He just was not very good. I think part of the blame, though, too, is the receivers. And Rob and I talked about that on the show yesterday, that, Ladd McConkey, Quentin Johnston, and Keenan Allen didn't do a good enough job separating, from the New England secondary, and that didn't make it easy for Justin Herbert. But it was a really wretched performance. And look, rightfully so, the chatter's going to pick up now on Justin Herbert. That's 0-2 in the playoffs for him now. And 2, not just bad, horrific performances from the offense. Houston in the wild card game last year, and then again Sunday night against New England. But credit to the Patriots. Drake May wasn't great, but boy, he avoided mistakes more than Herbert did. And when he had to put that game on ice, he did, with that unbelievable dropping a dime in the bucket throw to Hunter Henry to put that game away. So Patriots win that. And then, Houston's defense suffocating over Pittsburgh on Monday night to get the victory there, as Aaron Rodgers and the Pittsburgh Steelers fall short. The game was close for a while, but it was only close because of the Houston or the Pittsburgh defense holding Houston at bay for a while, but eventually they got going, and it was really all the defense. There was the fumble return for a touchdown as well by Houston to really put it away late. But I'll say this: C.J. Stroud was not impressive, even though Houston won that game. He was okay at times, but there were some head scratching bad throws, some head scratching decisions resulting in interceptions, and I'm worried for Houston a little bit because they had played anyone but Pittsburgh, and C.J. Stroud played like that Monday night. May not have been walking away out of that game victorious. But Philip, your thoughts on what we saw Wild Card Weekend? What stuck out to you?
Yeah, great breakdown, by the way. I agree with everything you said there. You hit a lot of my points too. But yeah, Rams Panthers there. I mean, very impressed with Stafford. That last drive, that last throw, holy crap! That couldn't have been any more perfect on his end. Little concerned with the Rams defense. I was really expecting a lot more out of that Rams defense there. Just being able to get more pressure on Bryce Young and be able to, maybe force his hand a little bit more, force some turnovers, bad throws, tip balls, whatever. But that game, what stood out there was just Stafford taking it over. Great play calling, great use of formations by McVay. Puka in the backfield. That 3-by-1, that touchdown up the seam to Puka was just incredible schematic design by McVay. I saw something before where earlier in the season, the Panthers showed their hand on defense, how they typically play 3-by-1 formations, with the running back being on the opposite side of the three receiver side of the formation. And they tend to either match them up, the running back matchup with a linebacker or a safety. And, McVay, they were on about the 20-yard line, and they put Puka back there, and he just burned the shit out of the safety and went up the seam for an easy touchdown. So, I mean, I just thought that was really brilliant coaching by McVay there. Bears, Packers, brutal, absolutely brutal, especially coming from Packers fan here. But just to break it all down, I mean, can't really fault Love too much there. I thought that he actually did a really good job, especially towards the end of the game where he had to make those throws. They had the drop on that last play as well by Jaden Reed. So, once again, though, you said it, special teams screwing us, McManus. I mean, geez, I think he had a missed extra point and a missed field goal. So that's 4 points right there. And then just Caleb Williams, just, I think that's his seventh come from behind victory this year alone. So that's just unheard of. So clearly something's working there for them. But Packers run game, non-existent, doesn't help when you're one-dimensional, especially in the second half of games. And when all of a sudden, a team makes adjustments on you in the second half, and you go 3 and out over and over again. I mean, it deflates the whole team, and that was just a big thing too. Even just getting a few first downs just to let the defense get off the field is huge. And play at least a little bit of some of the field positioning game, but there is none of that. Good win by the Bears. I think Caleb Williams is really coming along, but even at the same point, though, he still is missing throws, which is just wild to me. So we'll see how this goes moving forward for them. Bills, Jaguars, you hit that on the head too. Josh Allen putting on the cape. Was impressed with the Jaguars throughout that game, and then obviously at the end there, Trevor Lawrence just not really being able to muster up any drive, because what was that, the first play on that last drive where that was an interception there. So, but for the most part, Bills, Josh Allen, not surprised by how well he played. He needed to do that. I'm really excited to watch that Bills Broncos game coming up as well. But nothing more to say other than Allen putting on the cape there. 49ers Eagles, just terrible play calling by Patullo. Especially that last drive. I saw.
Oh, I missed that game in the recap. That I was.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a brutal loss for Philadelphia too.
And
look, that was a coaching exhibition by Shanahan and his staff over, Nick Sirianni and his staff. It was just outcoached. To be that shorthanded, that depleted, and to walk into Philadelphia and beat them, and that defense, which was picking up guys off the scrap heap to start on defense for that game, shutting down and Jalen Hurts was awful. I can't say it enough. Awful in the second half.
And and it's funny because I think Hurts, he did not play well. Obviously, AJ Brown with those drops. I mean, it's just all ironic how this all came around. AJ Brown complaining about not getting the ball, and then he's dropping all that stuff, whatever.
And then he
And then
doesn't talk to
the
the
last
media
drive for
after
the
the game.
Eagles.
And the one thing I'll say about McManus, the kicker for Green Bay, after an absolutely brutal night, he still spoke to the media after the game and faced the music. That dope AJ Brown didn't do that after a terrible game.
Yeah. Yeah, so interesting there, but you said it, Shanahan, incredible schematic design there on some of those plays, especially the touchdown to McCaffrey on that little Texas, we call it like a Texas angle route.
He's got better hands than some receivers catching the football.
Exactly.
It's
And
not fair. That's just ridiculous.
That last play call for the Eagles, 4 verts versus a cover. I mean, it's funny because the Eagles line up. And the play clock's running down, and they're showing, the 49ers are showing what they're doing. They got double A gap mug, and they're looking like a cover 4 shell. Okay, they finally freaking call the timeout. They're rushed. They didn't get the play call until like 8 seconds left in the play clock anyway. Take their timeout, which they had 3. Which I was like, what the fuck are they doing? They take the timeout. They go out, get in the same fucking formation, motion out AJ Brown, and run 4 verts versus cover 4. That's about the worst. That's the most lazy play call I've ever seen. And on that last drive, every single play call that Petula called was called at least.
That might be why he's an unemployed man today, Kevin.
Well, exactly. Yeah. And so, I mean, it's just wild because sometimes I'm like, man, geez, being an NFL coordinator, offensive coordinator would be really hard. But sometimes I'm like, what the hell? That guy has a job. So, that was brutal to me. Chargers, Patriots, I mean, you hit that one on the head too. I mean, Herbert couldn't perform. The receivers looked out of sync. Patriots, for the most part, offensively, it wasn't anything crazy, but they just did enough to shut the Chargers down. So that there's not much to say there. Very, very vanilla game there for me anyway. And then Texans, Steelers. I mean, the headline of that game is just that Texans defense is for real. And that pass rush might be one of the best pass rushes we've seen since the 2015 Broncos, in my opinion. I mean, those guys, when Von Miller and then those boys were getting after Cam in the Super Bowl, I mean, the whole playoff, that was just brutal. But at the same time, you're right. I think Stroud, he fumbled the ball a few more times, even than just the 2 that he lost. Plus, he threw an interception. I mean, first half of that game, it was looking like it might be a real dogfight. Unbelievable. If anyone bet the over, like we said last week, I mean, it's just brutal. The Steelers could only put up 6 points with 3 turnovers. So that was just a brutal one. And we knew what the Steelers were. I just didn't think it'd be that bad. And I thought that they'd be able to muster up a few more plays, but clearly the Texans defense is for real, and they're going to have a great test this weekend against the Patriots. So excited to break those down as well with you. And but I thought last weekend was a great weekend of football.
Yeah, it was. I mean, the two Saturday games were excellent, down to the wire. The Bills-Jags game was excellent. 49ers-Eagles, maybe not quite as scintillating start to finish, but it had a dramatic, thrilling conclusion. And then you had a couple of duds at the end. The Charger-Patriot game wasn't great, and the Texans-Steelers game turned into a blowout. But 4 of the 6 games last weekend were phenomenal viewing for anybody that's a big-time football fan, no doubt. From a betting standpoint, it was a great Saturday. We both got we'll take it. We both got a push on the over in the Buffalo-Jacksonville game. It landed on 51, and 51 was the total in that game. So we'll take that. But we missed with the Chargers, and we missed with the Monday night over. But still, it was an overall profitable weekend. We'll take it. We'll see if we can add to it here on Divisional Playoff Weekend. We'll begin with the first game on Saturday at 4:30 p.m. Eastern. Rematch of a AFC wildcard game last year between these two teams. Although that game was in Buffalo, now the Denver Broncos get to host the Buffalo Bills here in the playoffs. Right now, we have Denver 1.5-point home favorites in this game. The total right now sitting at looks like 46 for the most part across the board, although some places have 45.5 with this total currently as well. This is a very fascinating matchup because we know what the Achilles heel of the Buffalo Bills defense is. It's stopping the run. But Sean Payton sometimes forgets at times, that running the football, and Denver has not been maybe it's because Denver has not always been a great run offense this year. They haven't always done a great job running the football, and I think Peyton gets frustrated, and then he ends up putting the football more in the hands of Bo Nix. I think that's part of it. But in this game, I think if you're Sean Payton, you got to have the discipline and the patience to stick with running the football with R.J. Harvey here in this game, who's your primary running back, because Buffalo's run defense has been gashed. And even in the win, even though they survived and they beat the Jacksonville Jaguars last week, can't really say they shut down Travis Etienne. Etienne was able to rip off some big gainers on the ground in that game. Of course, we talked about there were some key injuries for the Bills defense. That doesn't change here. It looks like Max Hairston in the secondary, the impressive rookie's out again. There's a chance that once again, Terrell Bernard will have to miss at linebacker. And they lost the safety, veteran safety, Jordan Poyer, to injury last week against Jacksonville. So they could be missing those guys again, but there is some good news potentially. Sounds like Ed Oliver, who has been out for a very long time for the Bills and a big part of that defensive line, and he can do multiple things. He can rush the quarterback, he can play the run, can do both of those things. And right now, he might be playing. He's trying to, still questionable, but at least has been practicing this week. That would certainly be a big boost for the Buffalo defense. Offensively, we saw the Gabe Davis injury last week. He's out for the season, been ruled out. But, Curtis Samuel's been out for a while at receiver. He might be available for them. I know they might be elevating Mecole Hardman, who, of course, played with Kansas City for a good period of time. And they're going to need those guys stepping up because, as we know, Philip, they're not deep at receiver. They need, obviously, Khalil Shakir to be big. They would certainly – I got to tip my cap to Brandon Cooks. People laughed at the Bills for signing that guy in the offseason, saying, hey, he's washed up now. His best days are behind him. He's been great for this Bills team. He's been terrific, and he was great last week in the win against Jacksonville. So Brandon Cooks, well done. And he's developed some chemistry with Josh Allen. Keon Coleman, who's been in the Sean McDermott's doghouse at times this year, even he stepped up with a pretty solid game last week. And obviously the Bills, can they run the football against Denver? That's going to be interesting because there wasn't much of a run game with James Cook and Ray Davis and company last week. When I flip it around to Denver here, I look at their schedule and I start to worry about this. I hear a lot about how people think this is one of the absolute best defenses in the National Football League. I think they're a pretty good defense, but I've got to poke some holes in that for a couple of reasons. You start to look at some of those games late in the season for Denver on their home field. I remember the Green Bay game when the Green Bay Packers in that game, when they went to to Mile High in Denver, before the injury to Christian Watson in that game. Remember, that's when Christian Watson got injured midway through that game. They lost one of their best offensive linemen, Zach Tom, to injury in that game also against Denver. Before that, they were moving the ball up and down the field against that Denver Broncos defense. Green Bay had 16 points in the first half. And then obviously it slowed down once the Watson and the Zach Tom injuries occurred on the offensive side of the football. But Green Bay still put up, almost 400 yards of offense against that Denver defense in Denver. And then you fast forward to the Jacksonville game when they went to Denver and they couldn't stop Trevor Lawrence and the Jacksonville Jaguars offense in that game. And they gave up 34 points. There was no quarterback pressure on Lawrence whatsoever. He completed almost 23 for 36, 3 touchdown passes, 279 passing yards in that game for the Jacksonville Jaguars. They lit up that Denver secondary, and there was not much pass rush. So you start to look at Denver down the stretch. They gave up the 26 to Green Bay, and Green Bay, had some injuries in that game on offense as it went along. They gave up 34 to Jacksonville. They gave up 26 to Mariota and Washington in that Sunday night game where I don't think their defense played that great either in that football game. And you start to look at the other great defensive performances down the stretch. 2 of them were against Las Vegas and Geno Smith throw it out. One of them was against Kansas City late on Christmas Day, late in the season when Chris Oladokun was the quarterback and Chiefs were already eliminated. Throw that out. That's not a real sign of a great dominant defensive effort given the circumstances. And then your last game of the regular season was against a Chargers team starting Trey Lance and sitting all their starters. So how much can you make of the 3 points they allowed to the Chargers? When they've played an offense with any sort of pulse the last couple times, Green Bay and Jordan Love, Trevor Lawrence and Jacksonville, what I've seen, Philip, is a defense that's been sliced. It's a defense that has given up points. I like Buffalo here. I know there's concern about the fact that they played Sunday. They're a little bit of a banged up football team. It's a short week now, and you're on the road for a second straight week. You're playing Saturday, not Sunday. Denver's playing with that revenge and the chip on their shoulder for losing in Buffalo last year. At the end of the day, I can't help but think this is a close game still. And who would I rather want as my quarterback in a close game to have to try to win it for me? And I'll take Josh Allen. And that's no disrespect to Nix. It's just how great Allen is. And when you see Nix too, there's still those instances, wow, what a throw on the run, spectacular. And then there's that setup in the pocket and he throws it into the dirt. There's still those instances where you get those inconsistencies out of Bo Nix in the passing game. So I think Buffalo in a close game can pull this one out. Like I said, if you give Josh Allen a chance, even if he's trailing late in the fourth quarter, somehow, some way, this guy, he's could very easily find a way to beat you, just like we saw last week against Jacksonville. And I think this total's starting to go in the wrong direction. It's gone down to the 46-45 range. I'm looking over the total here now in this game. I think this is people thinking this Denver defense is great when I think it's nothing all that special. When you put them up against an offense that's capable like Green Bay, like a Jacksonville, they showed it. They gave up 26 and 34 points in those two football games, this Denver defense against the Packers and against the Jaguars. So I think Buffalo will move the football. I think at home, Denver and the offense will do a good bit of damage, too. We saw that Buffalo defense, too, in the second half. They won it because of Josh Allen and the offense. That defense was gassed in the fourth quarter. Trevor Lawrence in Jacksonville was having a lot of success. So I like this over, and I'm going to take the Bills here as a slight underdog. I am concerned about the spot and the injuries, but this is a quarterback I'm willing to trust in a close game. Phil, what do you think here, Buffalo, Denver?
Yeah, there's a few things that I'm really interested in seeing, and just some good stats to kind of consider when you're looking at this game. And one of them is statistically the Broncos play the most man in the league, and the Bills, Josh Allen, he's his best against man coverage. And there's a few reasons for that. I think he uses his tight ends and his running backs a lot, and that's versus man-to-man coverage. Obviously the Broncos, they're good in the secondary, so we'll see if they can cover their Cook and Kincaid and those guys. But Josh Allen does a really good job throwing to his tight ends and running backs in man-to-man coverage, and the Broncos are going to show a lot of man-to-man coverage. Other thing, and I'm sure Sean Payton is going to have some sort of a plan for this, but when you play man-to-man coverage, the secondary's eyes are locked on their guy, right? Josh Allen gets loose, you're going to see some big yards, some big rushing yards from Josh Allen in that as well. And so, I think that's one thing to consider in this matchup here. And I mean, you already said it, what I was thinking as well. But the Broncos defense, I think, has been hyped up a little bit here. So that's the first thing. The second thing here on top of this as well is, I feel like Bo Nix, and I mean, you could make the same argument for Allen here, but I think towards the end of the season, Allen has kind of started to hit his stride a little bit more. He's getting hot. That last game, gosh, some of the throws he made against the Jaguars were unbelievable. Nix, I mean, you just don't really know exactly what you're always going to be getting from Nix in that Broncos offense. So I think a key to this game is going to be, for both teams, though, is the running game for sure. I think you can't be one-dimensional. Bo Nix is not at his best when he's one-dimensional. And I mean, any quarterback you could say that for, but if I'm willing, and you already said it, if you have to pick one or the other, I mean, you're going to go Josh Allen's going to throw on the cape again. On the other side, Sean Payton is 3-0 in the playoffs coming off of a bye, which I thought was pretty interesting. Obviously, these are all with the Saints and, Drew Brees, so a little bit different there. But, Sean Payton, obviously, he earns his flowers as a great coach, and he can scheme up things and get guys open. So, the Bills are just going to have to really do their best on their end. And I didn't know Ed Oliver was coming back. That's going to be a huge help for them as well. So with that being said here, I mean, I think this game comes down to Josh Allen, just being able to beat a man-to-man defense. The Bills, I mean, obviously that you saw what they did last week in the run game versus the Jaguars. I would expect to see a heavy dose of James Cook. And then for the most part, I mean, I'm just expecting Josh Allen just outplay Bo Nix straight up in this game. And so, with that being said, I mean, I agree with you. I think that with the Bills defense, and then this Broncos defense not being exactly what a lot of people are hyping it up to be. I think you're right. I think this goes in and over. But I'm also rolling with you here on this one too. I think the Bills win this game. And I think it's going to be less than 3 points, so something like that, 3 or less. So, but I'm rolling Bills and I'm rolling over on this one too.
All right. And one last note about this game before we move on is the fact that Denver is a below average team defensively against tight ends. So this could be a game where, from a prop standpoint, get your Kincaid and your Knox props in for the Buffalo Bills, and plus I think getting the ball out quickly is going to be very important here for Buffalo, because Denver does bring the heat, and I think Buffalo's going to know that. So the quick passing game should be there for the Bills.
And that's one thing that you can see, last week in that game with Josh Allen is he took what was there. I think a lot of times, sometimes in those games, the Falcons games and things like that, where all of a sudden it's like he's forcing the cape on, you know what I mean? Where he didn't have to. And I think that in this Jaguars game, you see him take a drop back, get his eyes downfield. He sees, something underneath coverage, and he takes completions early on. And I thought that was a really good, it showed maturity from Josh Allen to take what's there. And that, that's something that Aaron Rodgers, I remember watching Aaron Rodgers, with the Packers. Sometimes his first 5 completions were all checkdowns. Everyone wants to drop back and do their thing and, feel out what's going on. Take the completions, get rolling, get some plus yardage plays early on. And I felt like Josh Allen really did a good job of that last week.
Sign of a quarterback that going on a decade now in the NFL. It's hard to believe he's been around that long.
Yeah, that's wild.
Yeah, it is. But here he is, about 10 years in the league, and you're right. He doesn't mind, tiptoeing his way into the game, and just letting the rhythm flow from just, get your legs under you, quick, easy throws early in the football game. And then when you need to dial it up, you can do that, later in the game when the situation calls.
Yeah. And there's really something to be said about, as a quarterback, to see your guys catch the ball the first few attempts that you make. I mean, there's something about that. It just gives you confidence. In the back of your head, okay, like I'm 4 or 5, I'm 5 of 5, I'm I have completions. Now I can kind of, I can take some more risks now, so there's something to be said mentally about that.
No doubt. All right, next up, Saturday, San Francisco, Seattle, rematch of Week 18. These teams met for the NFC West Division title and the 1 seed in the NFC, and it was Seattle in San Francisco getting it done 13-3. Now they'll play 2 weeks later here in the divisional round of the playoffs. We have Seattle 7-point home favorites, 45 the total. Let's start with the situationals, which are awful for this game for San Francisco. When you think about the fact that they had to go to Philly last week, short-handed, undermanned on defense, they lose George Kittle. Jake Ton just has to take over at tight end. Trent Williams, he did play at left tackle, and that was significant. You could see it. Even a less than 100% Trent Williams at left tackle is probably better than the alternative. And he did help that O-line a little bit for the 49ers in that game. But at the end of the day, that defense somehow, and you got to give Robert Saleh, Kyle Shanahan, and the coaching staff credit, bottled up the Eagles in the second half, albeit Jalen Hurts with some awful throws, some inaccuracies, multiple drop passes, including 3 by A.J. Brown in the second half. Plus, Lane Johnson was out. We didn't expect that. And that definitely hurt the Eagles' offensive line, because we know how good he is as far as an O-lineman, one of the best ones they've got. But you got to give San Francisco credit. They went there with all the personnel issues they had, and they found a way to win. Brock Purdy played one of his, I think, better games I've ever seen him play, considering the opponent, considering the venue on the road in a tough environment with as undermanned as his team was. Even on the offense, there was missing a few pieces as well. Kittle left that game, no Pearsall, and yet they were still able to make plays and win that game in the second half offensively with a couple of key drives. And the defense got the stops when they needed them and shut down Philly's offense. It was a great effort. Do they have this kind of effort in them to replicate it? On a second straight week against a rested opponent, team that knows them well inside out, divisional opponent. And then again, for the San Francisco 49ers, you had to travel all the way to the East Coast, play Philly on a Sunday, and now you got to travel all the way back home and then go up to Seattle, and you're playing on a Saturday. So you have one less work day this week and a short week for this game where Seattle's just rested and ready to go. I mean, the situationals are just so massive in favor of Seattle. That being said, you're asking Seattle to lay 7 in a situation where they only scored 13 points when they faced this San Francisco team just 2 weeks ago. And with Sam Darnold, who is 0-1 in the playoffs, and last year it was not just bad, it was a horrific playoff outing for him as a member of the Minnesota Vikings against the Rams. I remember it in that NFC wildcard game. It was a disaster. It was a terrible night for Sam Darnold. Are you ready to lay that kind of a number with Sam Darnold in his second playoff start, knowing he's searching for his first playoff win? At the same time, if you want to take San Francisco, still a banged-up team. It might be harder to survive those injuries this week compared to last week, because let's be honest, I think I'm now ready to say Seattle's a better football team than Philadelphia. That is for sure. And the situationals are really, really bad for San Francisco. You got to go all the way east. Now you're back west, and you have one less day because you're playing Saturday after playing Sunday last week. So it's a real tough game. I think if this number stays where it is, I've got the mildest of leans to the Niners just because I'm not really convinced, trustworthy of the Seahawks winning by margin again. But I just don't know if this San Francisco offense is going to fare all that much better. This is a real damn good Seattle defense, and they completely put the clamps down on Brock Purdy in this offense 2 weeks ago. And I'm not sure if as great as tactically as Shanahan and company can be, can you really do, are tactical adjustments going to be enough, to make this San Francisco offense have a different result, produce a different result this time around? Or is it just you're up against it personnel-wise? That's really the crux of this, and I'm not so sure San Francisco's offense will have a boatload of success here. I think if I were to play something, I think the most confidence I would have probably is San Francisco's defense got run on big time by Charbonnet and Walker. A little glass of Charbonnet and Kenneth Walker. They all had, combined for almost 200 rushing yards. And we know San Francisco, even in the win against Philly, pass rush wasn't consistent against Jalen Hurts, and they struggle with getting a pass rush, especially with all the injuries, especially with Nick Bosa's loss. That's really where you trace it back to the issues getting to the quarterback. And Sam Darnold is just a night and day different quarterback. Against pressure, he falls apart. With no pressure in his face, he can actually do some damage and make it work offensively. So maybe Seattle team total over. Maybe I get there with that in this game. Keep in mind the weather's going to be great for late January at Lumen Field. For Seattle, you always have to check the weather, and I'm seeing no wind and no rain and not that cold in Seattle on Saturday night. Philip, what do you think here, San Francisco, Seattle?
Yeah, I think you're spot on with everything you said there. I think this game is going to really come down to Seattle's defense just overpowering the 49ers like what we saw. Obviously McDonald, incredible coach. We saw what they just did there. I think the 49ers are just too decimated in terms of injuries. I did see Darnold. The one thing that's kind of funny is, Darnold oblique injury kept him out of practice yesterday, and
smoke screen because apparently he's going to play. There's no way he's not going to play.
Yeah, there's no way he's not going to play, but it's funny because now all of a sudden we're like, oh, here we go. We're setting up the excuses for Darnold. He's going to come out there and play like shit, whatever. But what I expect Kubiak to do offensively for the Seahawks is to really try to rely on this run game. I think that's what they're going to try to do. And, I think, as a play caller, if I go in the mind of, just the Seahawks coaching staff, Darnold just needs a win. He just needs a win. They don't need to do anything crazy. I think they can get away with this game being a little bit conservative and run the ball, heavy dose of Charbonnet, just like what you said, and Kenneth Walker. So I think that they're going to really try to kind of play this game more so. Let's run the football, control the clock, play good defense, because we don't have to do anything too special right now. So I think that they're going to kind of try to limit that a little bit. And with that being said, I think that this is a clear-cut under game here for me. 45 seems very high. I don't expect, the 49ers to be able to, put up that many points on them. And I don't think the Seahawks are going to be overly aggressive either. So with that being said, I think that the run game is going to be key for the Seahawks here, and they're just going to play good defense and just win this like an old traditional football game should be won.
Well, we saw 16 points 2 weeks ago with these two teams, 13-3 Seattle. Didn't even come close, obviously, to the total. So if we get something even close to that, resembling that, then yeah, it feels like this game is going to have a hard time getting over the 45 points that you see here with this total in this one. This is not a game I've made a bet on yet. I'm really waiting because you're right. I saw the oblique report and Sam Darnold's, kind of blowing it off here. And saying, just didn't want to push it because he injured it yesterday in practice. Just felt a little something. He says, wasn't the day to push it. That was it. I came inside, got some rehab, and I feel I'll be ready to go for Saturday. Darnold was asked what percent of him thinks he might not play. Very low percentage, probably closer to 0, is what he said. So he feels it's not a big deal. Like I said, though, I've seen this before, and then all of a sudden game day approaches, and all of a sudden you're still feeling it. Maybe it gets worse. So this is definitely something to just monitor. Let's wait till we get closer to Saturday night and see where we're at. Maybe it is no big deal, but still.
I don't love Sam Darnold missing out on first team reps in a playoff week. I don't love that, but that's why I'm saying I really, because of the injury and because of who Sam Darnold is, and I think just this hump that he needs to get over, I think that they're just going to be really conservative with them. They're going to run the football and they're going to just try to control the clock and play good defense. So
what will help that run game? Charles Cross's return, the great left tackle for Seattle. He's been injured late in the season. He's back and he's ready to go for this game. That will help open up that run game even more for Walker and Charbonnet. He is a great left tackle, and they have missed him. So having Charles Cross back will be significant for Seattle on the left side of that offensive line. All right, let's turn to Sunday. Houston, New England. New England, 3-point home favorites, 40.5 the total here in this game. Houston's defense is good enough to win this game by themselves. They can do that. That's how good they are. That's how good they are in the back field, against the pass in the secondary. I love Kamari Lassiter. I love Derek Stingley Jr. How do you not? They're great players. Up front, Will Anderson, Daniil Hunter, and company can get after the quarterback. They got everything. They got some pretty good linebacker. They got everything on all three levels of the defense. And we saw that even with the offense kind of mundane against the Pittsburgh Steelers on Monday night, defense was good enough to carry the day, shut down Aaron Rodgers and the Steelers completely, and lead them to victory in that game. But C.J. Stroud was rough. He was not great in that football game, and him playing that way here against New England, even if the defense plays great, they're in a much greater risk to lose this game if that happens. He's going to have to step it up. You can't be throwing that interception he did early in the third quarter when that game was still close. That's a terrible interception, terrible read, terrible decision, and a bad throw. That's usually a bad combination, and often what leads to an interception in the red zone, which took points off the board for Houston. So he's capable of much better than that. But will we get much better than that, Philip? Because the biggest worry I have for Houston's offense and Stroud is the absence of Nico Collins. Concussion against Pittsburgh, and I have seen, from what I hear, I don't think he's playing. I really don't. He hasn't seen the field yet this week, hasn't cleared concussion protocol. I don't think he's playing. And I have seen enough of Houston's offense and Stroud when he doesn't have his clear number one big play weapon at wide receiver down the field. And I just saw it now. Texan start, he's out. I think this was an hour or two ago, officially ruled out. I have seen enough of Stroud to know that this offense takes a nosedive, especially in the vertical passing game without Nico Collins. I've seen it. And that's no disrespect to Christian Kirk and Higgins, Jaden Higgins, and some of these other receivers that they've got. But he clearly has no chemistry more than he does with Nico Collins. And when Nico hasn't been on the field, the passing game has suffered. And not just suffered a bit, suffered a lot for Houston. So that's a real troubling sign that he's not playing here in this game, considering we just saw New England's defense look awesome, albeit an offensive line that stinks, and Herbert with playoff performance issues, but you still have to give the Patriots defense a lot of credit for the way they played. I made the case on the show with Rob that, if Nico Collins plays, getting more than 3 or more with this defense is probably what I'd be looking at. But without Nico Collins, I kind of pivot to New England. I honestly do, because I think that's really going to hurt the offense. It looks like Christian Gonzalez, by the way, it's not just you lose Collins on the offensive side for Houston. The best cover corner for New England in the secondary, who got injured in the Charger game, Christian Gonzalez, it looks like he's good to go for Sunday in this game. And so that sways the advantage big time as far as the pass game of Houston versus the secondary of New England. That sways it in favor of the Patriots here. And look, Drake May, I don't even blame him for the interception early. It was a tip ball. I thought he got more comfortable and he used his legs, which I like to see. He had a couple of big runs for first downs. The throw to Henry to put the game away was outstanding. It's not going to be easy. You know, this New England offense has to be able to block Campbell and Hunter. For Houston to win this game, the defense has to maul New England's offensive line. They got to force some turnovers, and they've got to hope maybe even they get a score on defense. Because I think now without Collins, I have a hard time seeing C.J. Stroud having that same success offensively in this game. So I'm leaning New England. It's probably low scoring, but man, they're not doing you any favors here with 40.5 being the total. What do you think here, Philip? Texans, Patriots.
Yeah, I didn't know Nico was officially ruled out. Obviously, that came out an hour ago, but that's a pivoting factor for me too. I mean, geez, we saw all year what happens. Anytime actually with CJ. When he doesn't have Nico, drastically affects that offense, and that offense is already struggling mightily. And the Patriots, they put up a good outing, last week as well. So, what I was going to say before I knew that was, the only chance that the Texans win this game is if CJ, plays at least a solid average game.
One thing I want to point out too before you continue, I mean, yeah, the Chargers' offensive line had issues last week, but New England can get after the quarterback with that.
Yeah.
And it's not like Houston's offensive line is an elite unit.
Exactly. And we saw that versus the Steelers. Obviously, the Steelers' D-line is pretty good too. But with that being said, I mean, I just don't see where the points come up in this game. So, 40.5, man, like, it seems pretty spot on, but I'm still going under because I think that, Vrabel probably knows that what they have to do is just not turn the ball over, honestly, because I think that Texans offense isn't going to score. And I think the Patriots can do just enough because, I mean, we've also seen the Texans give up points as well. So I think hopefully, McDaniels has a good, a good strategy, good game plan here for this defense, and he doesn't put May in too many bad situations. Again, I always say this: you don't want 3rd and long versus these defenses because they know you're throwing it or you're running it, not getting the first. But if you need to throw it, it's everyone's just going after the quarterback there. So. With that being said, I think it's going to be a really close game. I would go under here, but I would probably lean more towards Patriots money line than -3 because I think it's going to be a really low scoring game. And I think
this is an example of me. I would pay the price to take the money line as opposed to lay the -3. I agree.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So that's where I'm at.
All right, Rams and Bears, last game of NFL Divisional Playoff weekend. We've got the LA Rams minus 3.5-point road favorites, 48.5 the total in this game. This is the one, well, most of the week and especially earlier in the week, this is the game that had the biggest weather concerns. Frigid cold weather expected at Soldier Field Sunday night at 6:30 p.m. Eastern. We're talking 18 to 20 degrees Fahrenheit. So very, very cold conditions at Soldier Field. The good news is there's not going to be much as far as precipitation. 20% chance of, it would be snow. There's no doubt it's snow when you're talking 20 degrees Fahrenheit. It's not rain. But doesn't look like we'll see any snow in the forecast. 17-mile-per-hour winds is a concern. This is going to be the windiest venue of divisional playoff weekend. But 17-mile-per-hour winds are not as devastating as they could be. Usually the wind speed has to get, Philip, to 20 to 25 miles per hour for me to start getting concerned about how it affects the passing game, how it affects the downfield vertical throws especially, and also how it affects the kicking game. And let's be honest, we saw conditions not ideal last week in Chicago for that Packers-Bears game. It was cold for that game too. and there was some wind in the same wind speed range, 15 to 20 miles per hour. How many points did we have in that game? Oh, yeah, 58. Flew way over the total. So I was
Yeah.
staying with Rob earlier on the other Football Frenzy show we did this week for Divisional Playoff Week that I've all week long I've been just watching this friggin' forecast in Chicago all week like a hawk. Just waiting like a vulture, just waiting to pounce here, hoping I get good news with the weather because I'm dying to bet this thing over the total here at 48.5 with the Rams and the Bears. I think you and I were in agreement last week, Philip, with that Rams Panthers game. We both liked points in that game over, and especially Rams to be able to score. And that's kind of where I land in this game. I think a combination, just like I had last week. I had Rams team total over against Carolina, and I had the full game over, and we went 2-0. That's what I'm looking at here. I think the Rams move the ball at will against Chicago. I just do. I mean, I think they can't get pressure on the quarterback. Jordan Love was picking them apart until Matt LaFleur decides in the second half, let's try to get cute and run, even though we're picking them apart and slicing them in the passing game against that Chicago secondary. Well, if you don't pressure Matthew Stafford, and Chicago's been one of the weakest and worst passing quarterback pressure rate teams all year in the NFL, then Matt Stafford will pick you apart. There's just too many weapons that he can throw to if you're not going to get in his face. And if he's going to have time to set his feet and throw the football, hello Puka Nacua, hello Devontae Adams, hello Colby Parkinson, all these guys are going to end up, having a lot of success against you. And I think I could see that because Chicago just doesn't get enough consistent pressure on the quarterback here going into this game. Now, there is concern about Stafford in the cold, but I saw Stafford in the cold playing a blizzard last year against Philadelphia, and I thought he played all right. He didn't look scared of the cold in that game, and that was a better Eagle team and a better defense probably than this year's Philadelphia team. So I think that's overrated. I think he can go into Soldier Field on a cold Sunday night and still move the football here in this game. You got to love the way he played last week against Carolina, especially with the game on the line. They ended up scoring, of course, 34 points. The problem with the Rams is their defense. It's an overrated unit. They continue to give up big plays every week. If they don't get pressure from Jared Verse, the linebacking core is mundane. The secondary, you can shred them a bit. Hell, Bryce Young was able to do that last week. 31 points for Carolina. Bryce Young had 264 through the air, and they weren't running the football much. And yet still through the air, Bryce Young did a lot of damage against this Rams team. So the Rams' offense has been amazing. 34, 28, 45, 41, 37, 24, 37, 34, the points they put up. And they've gone 7 straight overs, the LA Rams. 7 straight Rams games have gone over the total, dating back to the regular season. So I think the Rams, it's going to be a typical Rams game like what we've seen. They will move the football. They will probably get their 28, 31 points here in this game, at least, against this Chicago defense. But I don't know if I trust this Rams defense to totally contain Monangai and Swift on the ground, nor contain Caleb Williams in the passing game. Now, there are a couple receivers questionable for Chicago. Odunze, who hasn't played for a while anyway, but DJ Moore's on the injury report. That's significant because he's certainly someone that Caleb Williams counts on. So keep an eye on that. But right now, this would be Rams team total over 26.5 for me, and also the full game over 48 in this game. I don't think this weather report is enough as far as severity to keep me off looking at a higher scoring game here. Philip, what do you think here? Rams, Bears.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think I agree with the weather. I think that the Rams are, Stafford's a seasoned veteran. He's seen it all. He's played in Green Bay. He's played in, Chicago. He's played in the NFC North. Obviously he was indoors with the Lions, but he's been on the road in these cold situations. That's no concern to me. I'm putting a lot of my faith in McVay here as well. I really like what he's doing schematically. I love the way that they're using Puka and Devontae and, the running game and everything.
You pointed it out earlier. It's like McVay's just out scheming the other guy on the defensive side.
Exactly. So, I think you're right here. I think this is a battle of 2 of the best offensive minds in football, with Johnson and McVay. So, with that being said, I'm dying for the over 2 here. It's just, you always have that little bit of doubt when it's 18 degrees and 17-mile-per-hour winds.
Because it's like a brick trying to catch that football, right?
Yeah, right. And these but that's the thing though. Devontae's no stranger to the cold. Puka is a tough son of a bitch. He's going to go out there and play. So I mean, I'm with you on this one. I'm dying to go over on this, especially the Rams over, because I think they're going to win the game. 3.5. I don't know. I think it's going to be really close. We'll see there. I'd feel more comfortable with just a money line, but I think the Rams pull this one out. I think this goes over. I think both defenses are struggling, and I think it's going to be a really fun game to watch, especially through the air. And obviously the Bears with Nungai and Swift, they're going to be able to move the ball or run the ball as well. So, but ultimately, I think Stafford is the league MVP. He's going to come out on top, and I think that he's going to have to, maybe do some late game heroics there to pull this thing out. But I think it's going to be a close game. But I think the Rams pull it out.
Yeah, definitely. This should be a good one. This should be a fun game. And like I said, I think the good news is I look at the weather forecast, Philip, today compared to Monday. It's gotten better. There's no question it's gotten better. I saw winds 25 miles per hour, and I saw even a little bit colder temperatures earlier in the week. It's actually a little bump up in the temperature, and the wind speed's gone down slightly.
Yeah,
where it was earlier. I don't think the weather's going to be enough of a impediment here. For these two offenses. I think
agreed.
Because remember, it was not ideal weather conditions at Soldier Field last Saturday night between Green Bay and Chicago, and that sucker just flew way over the total.
Yeah,
that game. So that's what I'm banking on here with the Rams and the Bears on Sunday night. So that'll be interesting here. One thing also to note here with the Chicago with the Rams offense too is. Their run game is basically, and this is important to note when it comes to player props. It can be tricky to bet rushing props with the Rams because they interchange Kyron Williams and Blake Corum, quite a bit. They've been using both of those guys on the offensive side of the football. So, like I said, that makes it a little tricky. Now, the Bears did do a good job of stopping Josh Jacobs last week, but you have to remember, still a Chicago team that's 21st against the run, and the Packers did have some offensive line injuries last week in the game against the Bears. So, like I said, I think the Rams are going to be able to have some balance. I think there'll be more pass than run a little bit because of just the lack of quarterback pressure that Chicago applies. But like I said, I think there'll be some opportunities still to run it with some success here for the Williams and Corum combination here for the LA Rams. Great stuff, Philip. Great to talk NFL divisional playoffs. Hope everyone enjoyed the show. Hit the like button for all of you watching here on YouTube. Let's wrap it up with best bets for NFL divisional playoff weekend. Philip, we'll start with you. What do you like for best bet?
I really like this last one we broke down. Bears Rams. I really like this over. And even honestly, now that I think about it a little bit more so than that, I think I've heard you say it before, and I just looked it up. But the Rams team total over 26-ish or so. I saw between
26.5 with the Rams.
26.5. I mean, I think the Rams are going to win that game. I think both offenses are gonna light up the scoreboard. And like we said, I don't think weather is going to be that big of a factor in this one, just given, who these teams are and who's actually, in there playing. But I think the Rams win this game. And I think the safer between the two bets would be the Rams team total over of 26.5. So that's what I'm going with as my best bet today.
There you go. Los Angeles Rams team total over 26.5 for Philip Nelson with his NFL divisional playoff best bet. My best bet, let's take the Buffalo Bills plus 1.5. I like the over 2, but I'm going to go Bills. Bills plus 1.5 against the Denver Broncos. Going to give me Josh Allen in a close game. I'll take Josh Allen in a close game to find a way to get the job done. And I think they will. So the Buffalo Bills plus, I like the over 2 quite a bit in that game, but can't go with both. I'll go with Buffalo plus 1.5 against Denver for my best bet here for NFL divisional playoff weekend. Great stuff, Philip. Anything to add before we wrap the show up?
No, so it's fun doing the show with you. I think these are some pretty interesting matchups this weekend. I'm excited to watch them and enjoy the weekend, folks. And next week we'll be breaking it down again.
Just 2 games to talk about next week. That's a sign the season is coming to an end.
I know.
That. No doubt. Conference Championship Sunday next week. We'll tee it up. For Philip Nelson, I'm Ian Cameron. Have a great weekend. Enjoy the NFL divisional playoffs and good luck. And we'll see you next week for Conference Championship Sunday edition of Ian Cameron's Football Frenzy.